I'm telling you all of this because church is multifaceted. It is praise and worship. And if you can do the dance, do the dance. If it's a fling, do the fling. Whatever it is, do it because God, church is about praise and worship. It's also about learning, about teaching and learning, right? Some people think that's all it is. I've had people come to this church over the years and they say, I'll just come in late, I'll drift in after the music's done because I'm not into that praise and worship stuff. I just want the teaching. Well, you missed half of it. Missed a big slab of it. It's about praise and worship, it's about the learning, it's also about small fellowship groups, it's about ministry groups, it's about mobs. Church is mobs. I bumped into this lady that day, she said, I'm not coming to your church anymore. I saw you here last Wednesday. I said, I saw you here at my church on Wednesday. She said, no, I came to mobs. They're in church. Mobs is church. It's about connect groups. It's about play group. Those who come to play group, they come to this church. That is church. It's not something other, it's part of church. Youth is church. I came down here Friday night to pick up my youth. I got a youth at the moment. Drop 2 youth off and pick one up. That's a good deal. As I came in, the youth pastor said, Pastor Gordon, I've got something to tell you. Well, it's always tough. The proverb says, where there are no oxen, the stall is clean. It's a fact I brought up on a dairy farm. I have the cows in there, the cow bars stay clean. You bring them in, cow blocks. And so where there are no oxen, the stalls are clean, but it says strength comes from many oxen. And we have a little saying around here, when stuff is all stuffed up, the oxen have been in. And the oxen have been, and they've been frisbees in here. And they'd had a good shot, and they'd hit the sign, the council sign at the back that says 325 people are allowed to sit in here. And it was crumbled in a mess down the floor. It's got a brand new one up there this morning, because that's how we are. But the oxen had been. Church is youth. That's my point here. Church is coffee time after this bit. Church is when we do those busy bee things, you know, when we tidy up the campus, that's church. Church are children's ministries of all kinds that we have here. Church is a coffee time. Church are connect groups. Church is inviting someone over for lunch or dinner. You can have church at your house. Don't miss this bit of church, but have that bit of church also at your place. We've got Hospitality Sunday coming up soon. It's on Sunday the 22nd of August. And you get to do church in your house on that day. Or maybe Harry and Millie invite you over for lunch at their house. And you get to do church with them at their house. You see, I want to give you this morning a couple of key verses and concepts about hospitality. By the way, talking of typos, it's verses V-E-R-S-E-S. And not V-E-R-S-U-S, as in your newsletter there. It's not one opposed to the other. This is verses and concepts, verses as in Bible verses. And so listen to this about hospitality to strangers. Hebrews 13:2 in God's Word translation. Don't forget to show hospitality to believers you don't know. By doing this, some believers have shown hospitality to angels without being aware of it. Isn't that fantastic? You could invite George or Joe Blow from here over for lunch. You don't know them all that well. And by the time you've done, you've had an angel in your house. And this is really referring back to Genesis, where Abraham had 3 guys in for lunch. One of them ended up being God, another 2 were angels. I remember it was back on the 12th of April, year 2000, and I invited a guy over for dinner. 12th, I don't remember, that's my birthday. And this guy came over, his name is Rob Derricks, D-I-E-R-K-X. I've never met another guy with that surname ever. You might have, you might even know this guy. I invited him over. He worked for Tees Contractors on the freeway that was then going through. It was just started then. And I invited him over. This building wasn't here, we were about to build this. And I didn't think that at the time that, oh, this guy is an engineer, and because he works for Tees Contractors and we build freeways, he will help us build the church. I didn't think that. I just thought I should invite this guy over for a meal. And when he came in and the birthday cake came out, it was my birthday, he thought it was for him because it was his birthday also. And as we got to talk about things, about the cake and the birthdays and the building that we're building here, he said, I'm going to help you. Tees Contract, we got Tees prices for everything. He brought in the machinery off the freeway and did all the levelling here. And the carpet, he did the whole lot here. It cost a little bit, but it was like much compared to that much, you know. And we got teased prices at hardware stores and all this stuff. And finally, you know, when we opened this building in November 2000, and I rang up Rob Derricks to invite him here, it said there was no such mobile number. So I rang Tees Contractors, they'd never heard of him. Well, I don't know who he was. I've never heard of him since. He's gone. Did he have wings and fly? I don't know, but he's gone. What was he? I just invited the guy home for a meal. Some have invited people home for a meal and entertained angels unawares. So if you ever meet Rob, he's an angel anyway. That's what he is. Whether he's flesh or blood, he's still an angel. Hebrews 32 in the Amplified, do not forget or neglect or refuse to extend hospitality to strangers in the fellowship, sharing the comforts of your home and doing your part generously, for through it some have entertained angels without knowing it. So I want to say, go on, take a risk and have someone over for a meal, someone you don't know too well. You just met them here and you don't really know them. Take a risk, invite them over. You may have an angel in your place and you don't even know it. Yeah. Now, in case you haven't figured it out yet, we've just deviated this morning from our series in Joshua. We'll get back to that next week. Second key concept this morning that I want to talk about, because we're talking about hospitality. Be inventive in hospitality. I love this verse. Romans 12:11 in the Message just says what I just said. Be what? Inventive. Be inventive in hospitality. So how many different ways can you do hospitality? Think about it. I'm going to give you some ideas before we're done here this morning. Just flowing out of the Bible. It's all good. Romans 16:1 in the Message. Welcome our friend in the way of the Master, capital M, that's Jesus, with all the generous hospitality we Christians are famous for. Be inventive in hospitality. God is creative, and He created each one of us to be creative, and we have 2 weeks to think about this and fire up our creative juices to get inventive in hospitality for Hospitality Sunday on Sunday the 22nd of August. Be creative, be inventive. I'm going to say more about that shortly. Now, I said it at the beginning, I'm going to say it again. Christianity is more than an academic exercise or an exercise in religiosity, whatever that might be. It's more than an exercise in abstract theology or mysticism. God's plan is for us as individuals to connect, not just to learn abstract concepts, which will never help you anyway. Acts 2:42 says they devoted themselves, the new believers who were just baptized, to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to the breaking of bread and to prayer. They hung out together, that's what they did. And they ate together as well as praying and learning. In fact, they did a lot of their learning and praying as they had a meal. Acts 2:42 in the Message. They committed themselves to life together, the common meal, and to prayer. They ate together. That's what they did. And so it's very interesting as Jenny's got Tracy waiting in the water here and giving the story in the background. She said, they invited us over for dinner and we talked about prayer. They invited us over to dinner and from talking about prayer we talked about baptism. They invited us over for dinner. She said it's about 3 or 4 times. I'm thinking that she read my notes. Maybe she's listening to the same God I'm listening to. They invited us over for dinner and we talked about all these things. They ate together. Now this is what I find just wonderful. In the New Testament, we have at least 59 documented one another's. And a few examples here for you. It should be on the screen. Love one another up there. There we go. Love one another. Encourage one another. Build one another up. Carry one another's burdens. Pray for one another. Pray for Rob Joe with me. Won't you do that? Promise me you'll do that. Pray for one another. Forgive one another. Oh, big one, hey. Greet one another. That's why we do that crazy greeting thing every Sunday. We're going to do it again tonight. You won't want to miss tonight. Because we're going to do that. We'll probably do Happy Day and Pastor Cheryl will dance around here again. And we'll do the fling ourselves. But one another's are about practical connections, not just practical, I'm talking about not just spiritual, academic, doctrinal, informational stuff. We love the information. What we want is someone give me the mathematical equation for all of this. As if there's a mathematical equation for everything, for child raising. You do this, do that, do the other thing, just do that little mathematical equation. When we see what's working here, another church wants to grab what we've got, so take it over there, see if it'll work over there, but it won't. There's a spirit to this thing. There's a spirit to this thing. So the one another's are about practical connections, not just all those abstract things, which brings us back to hospitality. And so I want to take you to take this home with you today, to take nothing else home. I want to give you what is called an axiom. All right. So an axiom is, to just define it, is a rule, it's a principle, it's an assertion. And I'm going to give it to you, and then we're all going to say it together, and by the time we're done this morning, we're going to say this several times. We'll take it home with you. Here it is. The meal is always on about more than food and drink. Let's say it all together. The meal is always on about more than food and drink. Take it home with you. Take that home with you. Shout it from the rooftops. Tell everyone, the meal is always on about more than food and drink, because it is. It is. Now I'll show you what I mean by that. Matthew 11, 18 and 19. For John, that's John the Baptist, came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he's got a demon. Son of Man came eating and drinking, that's Jesus, and they say, here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners, but wisdom is proved right by her actions. Here's the point. Jesus did not spend all of his time teaching his people from a religious classroom. It wasn't just like that. Now, of course, he did do the classroom stuff. You just read Matthew 5 and 6, and you'll say, oh, that's the Sermon on the Mount. He had them all sitting down, and he had this natural pulpit up there, natural acoustics on the side of the mountain, and these 5,000 seated down there, and he taught them, right? So he did do that. And so there's a place for that. We're doing that here now. We're teaching it, right? Pastor Alethea and I are teaching a shape class after this service right in here. So you need to be somewhere else if you're not in that class, because we're in here. We've booked this place in here, right? About 11:30ish. So we're doing it. So Jesus did that, but he did most of his teaching, talking and walking and eating with people. He did it over meals. Then he was invited over to dinner, and they talked about prayer. How did we get across from Canberra to here without running out of petrol and money and all that? Someone was praying. He taught them on the run over a meal about issues like baptism and faith and a whole bunch of other things. Jesus connected with people over a meal, and over that meal he invested the principles of God's kingdom into the people that he was eating with. Now, the religious people looking in at this, he's not dealing with religious people at all. He's dealing with the hoi polloi, the average person. He's just talking to people. Did the religious people understand what he's doing when he's always having meals with people? And the answer is no, they did not. They did not understand it, nor did they appreciate it. Luke 15, 1 and 2, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathered around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees, these are religious people, and the teachers of the law muttered. Religious people mutter. This man welcomes sinners and what? Eats with them. Oh my goodness, he's eating. That's worth muttering, he's eating. Now, here's our axiom. Let's say it all together. The meal is always on about more than food and drink. Luke 15, 1 and 2. The tax collectors and sinners, they're all gathering with Jesus, they're eating with him. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law mutter, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. And so the rest of Luke chapter 15, Jesus answers that criticism. That's what he does. And in order to answer, he tells three stories. He tells the story of the lost sheep. He tells the story of the lost coin. And he tells the story of the lost son. And he's telling those stories for this reason, to answer the criticism. You're always eating with this lot. Why are you always eating with them? And he's saying, in effect, the reason you always see me in the restaurants and the coffee shops so often is because I'm connecting with people to connect them with God. I'm looking for those things that are lost from God. And I'm going to call them the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son, but I'm talking about lost people who are cut off from God, and I want to sit down in a restaurant with them, sit down over a meal in someone's house, have a coffee with them, in order, Mr. Religious person, connect them back to God. To connect them back to God, because the meal is always on about more than food and drink.